Without objection.
Now, first, Madam President, I want to offer condolences to the family of Don Young, the Dean of the House, longest-serving Republican in history, who passed away last Friday at the age of 88. The state of Alaska has lost a titan, the House of Representatives has lost a legend, and my thoughts are with his family in this difficult time. Now on SCOTUS. Earlier today, the Senate Judiciary Committee commenced their hearings on Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson's historic nomination to the United States Supreme Court. The daughter of public educators, the pride of Miami Palmetto Senior High School, and a federal judge for nearly a decade, Judge Jackson began her testimony by returning to what matters most: her family, her upbringing, her qualifications, and most of all, her fidelity to the Constitution. Over the course of the week, I expect the American people will finally see for themselves why Judge Jackson is one of the most qualified individuals ever to be nominated to the Supreme Court of the United States. They will see, for instance, why the American Bar Association unanimously rated Judge Jackson as well qualified for the Supreme Court, their highest rating possible. They will see why the President of the Fraternal Order of Police said there is, quote, little doubt that Judge Jackson has the temperament, intellect, legal experience, and family background to have earned this appointment, unquote. They will see why even conservative judges, like retired D.C. Circuit Judge Thomas Griffith, who introduced Judge Jackson today, wrote that, quote, Judge Jackson is immensely qualified to serve on the Supreme Court and should be confirmed by the Senate, unquote. And I also trust that Americans will see right through the misleading and desperate broadsides that a few members of the other side have launched against the judge in recent weeks. We need not pretend that wild accusations from self-interested actors deserve to be taken seriously. So color me skeptical that the American people will give them much weight. Finally, as these hearings begin, I want to thank Chairman Durbin for organizing a speedy and fair confirmation process. His work has been outstanding. Every member of the Senate Judiciary Committee has met with the judge, which will allow for thoughtful and thorough hearings, just as the chairman had promised. I thus remain confident that as these hearings begin, the Senate is on track to confirm Judge Jackson as the 116th Justice of the Supreme Court by the end of this work period. Now on Senate business. As the Judiciary Committee begins a busy week of hearings, the Senate likewise begins a busy week here on the floor. Later this afternoon, the Senate will vote to invoke cloture on the motion to proceed to the House-passed America Competes Act, the next important step towards enacting major jobs and competitiveness legislation that both Republicans and Democrats widely support. Over the past year, the House and Senate have acted independently to pass their own versions of competitiveness legislation. To reconcile the differences between these bills, both chambers must enter a conference before we send a final product to the President's desk. In order to go to conference, the Senate needs to amend the House-passed Competes bill with the Senate-passed U.S. Innovation and Competition Act and then send it back to the House. That's what we're working towards starting today. Now, Madam President, it is of the highest urgency we move forward on competitive legislation. It will lower costs. The words of the day are lowering costs, stop inflation. This bill will do a lot in that regard. The competitive legislation will lower costs by bringing manufacturing jobs back to America, by fixing bottlenecks in our supply chains, and by fueling scientific research. Importantly, this bill would also help ensure that the U.S. has a long-term and resilient supply of chips, crucial for our military, our auto industry, our tech industry, and for American families who feel the sting through price hikes and maddening delays in available goods. As the war in Europe reminds us, our country is vulnerable when we import too many goods from a single country, particularly semiconductors, so needed in so many sectors of the economy. We need to make more of these products here in America, instead of overseas, to shore up our supply chains, preserve our national security. For that reason alone, let's not tarry any longer. Let's pass this important bill. No more delay. I want to thank my Republican colleagues, especially Senators Cornyn and Young, for continuing to work in good faith in this process. Most of us want to see a conference happen soon, and I believe we can reach that goal in the coming weeks. Now, As important as Judge Jackson's hearings are, I urge everyone not to sleep on a handful of other hearings happening this week that are crucial for our country's agenda and, frankly, our Democratic agenda. In the Senate Help Committee, Chairman Murray will hold a hearing tomorrow on something Democrats have pushed for months, cutting the cost of child care in preschool for American families. The Senate Committee on Aging, meanwhile, will hold a hearing this Wednesday on increasing home care services to seniors, something I strongly support, and I thank Chairman Casey for organizing this hearing. And finally, the Committee on Environment and Public Works will also meet Wednesday for a hearing on clean energy, combating climate change, and increasing America's energy independence in the 21st century. All these issues, fighting climate change, lowering the cost of child care, taking care of our seniors, remain at the top of our caucus's priorities. These hearings will inform us immensely as our caucus continues working on legislation that will lower costs and expand opportunity for the American people. And finally, last week on PNTR, the House acted in near unanimous fashion to pass legislation revoking permanent normal trade relations with Russia. This legislation is very much needed for fighting Russia and holding Putin accountable for the carnage, the despicable, nasty, devilish carnage he has levied upon the Ukrainian people. This bill is one way to make sure he continues to pay a heavy price for starting this bloody and savage war. We need this legislation passed without delay. It got overwhelming support from Republicans in the House, including from Leader McCarthy. There's no reason to hold it up. Let's move it forward. Let's move it forward. No nation has so thoroughly soaked the blood of innocent civilians as Russia. No nation like that deserves to have any kind of normal trade relations with the United States. And I call on my Republican colleagues to work with us to pass this legislation quickly. There is no reason, absolutely no reason, to delay its passage. I yield the floor and note the absence of a quorum.
The clerk will call the roll.